2025 Spanish Grand Prix. Dick's Race Notes.
Well, hey everybody. It was a pretty interesting Spanish Grand Prix, and I just thought I'd share some of my thoughts and comments and takeaways from this race. Overall, the race itself I thought was really fairly processional. I mean, it was a race of managing tires. And so when they manage tires, you know how that's going to be. They're going to be reluctant to engage in too much battle for fear of having to go a fewer number of laps, let's say, than what their opposition may be that was conserving their tires. So it was a little bit of a tire conservation race until the last 10 laps or so, when a safety car had to be dispatched, basically because of Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes having suffered some sort of a power unit failure, and he got beached in the gravel traps. And so the safety car had to come out while the safety crews were, pulling Kimi's car out of harm's way. And when that happened, a lot of people elected to go with a third pit stop, came in, got fresh tires, went back out, and now once the track went green again with, like I said, about 10 laps to go, suddenly tire management and all that was not a big deal. And so we saw some real fireworks, and really that race was what I've always hoped that the sprint races would look like. And that's not what we're getting with sprint races, but this was actually a lot of fun to watch. Like I said, many of those cars made a third pit stop under the safety car. They got fresh tires, and really that was the key to the race. Several of the racers traded track position for new tires, and that gamble generally paid off. At the end of the race, obviously Oscar Piastri took what I thought was a finely judged win over his teammate Lando Norris, this being Piastri's first win of this particular triple header, having been manhandled like everybody else by Verstappen at Imola. And then he was beaten fair and square by his teammate Lando Norris at Monaco. So I felt like this was a good response by Oscar after having had to face up with some races that were probably pretty disappointing for him. One of the things that is starting to become a more common topic than not, unfortunately, is that Mercedes struggled. George Russell did get a good result, but then, at the same time, they lost Kimi Antonelli, who was certainly driving in the top 10, and he had another power unit issue. So it's kind of funny because we remember, Fernando Alonso lost a power unit, a Mercedes power unit, at Monaco when he was obviously headed to points. And then here we go one race later, and now Kimi Antonelli has a Mercedes engine failure. So it makes you kind of wonder what's going on there with Mercedes and their power units. The other end of the spectrum was Lewis Hamilton, who basically endured another really difficult race for Ferrari, who seems to be just up and down all the time. Some tracks they do well, other tracks not so well. And Lewis is clearly getting frustrated. He said this was like the worst race of his entire Formula One career. And I don't know, Lewis has got, 300 something starts. And if he's saying that, and of course I realize that's in the heat of the day, but still, he clearly is super frustrated. The Spanish Grand Prix was also the place where the new rules regarding how the front wings were going to be measured in an effort to cure some of the flexible front wing controversy. But it turned out to be really much ado about nothing. They came out with the new regulations. The teams complied with the regulations. And mostly what this wound up being was just a costly exercise for the teams that did nothing to change the competitive order. About the only noticeable change the new rules did was to make the cars a bit more oversteery, according to some of the drivers, and that was it. So, again, this is one of those deals where the rules makers came up with this brilliant rule, cost the teams a lot of money to develop those new wings that would be in compliance with those new rules, and it made absolutely no difference at all. A little bit of a head scratcher on that one. Another thing is we are clearly starting to see the red mist coming from Max Verstappen. And this is not something completely foreign to Max, but it is a side of him that we haven't seen much in the last couple of years, call it. But he's clearly running out of patience, as witnessed the bashing that he gave George Russell towards the end of the race. And that resulted in a 10-second penalty, which dropped Max to 10th after a really fraught drive where he had to contend with, he said, no grip, difficult lap traffic, and other situations that clearly has been wearing on his patience. And I think the difficulties that Red Bull is having in finding the sweet spot with that car is starting to catch up to George. And having said that, it is absolutely caught up to Yuki Tsunoda, who's obviously still struggling with the second Red Bull, just like every other second Red Bull driver in the last, 5-6 years, something like that. The trouble Red Bull is having this year is making Sergio Perez, you remember him, right? Sergio is starting to look like maybe he is another excellent racing driver who just can't deal with the tricky characteristics of the Red Bull. It makes you wonder, they were doing better with Sergio in the second seat than anybody else so far. And a little bit of a head scratcher. And at the same time, Max, I should say, is defending Yuki. And so does that tell you something? And did some reading and a little bit of research, and it turns out that Max's car for Spain had a number of upgrades, whereas Yuki was still running on the standard spec. And so Max had a new floor, obviously a new front wing, which Yuki would have had as well. But there were other bits and pieces for this car, and Yuki didn't get them. And so I wonder if Max's car improved a lot and Yuki's car clearly didn't go anywhere. At the end of the day, I really feel for him because Yuki qualified 20th, for crying out loud. So anyway, he's got a lot to think about over the next 2 weeks before we go to Canada. I do want to congratulate my man Fernando Alonso for finally avoiding the cartoon anvil and scoring his first points of the year. At the same time, I got to give condolences to Lance Stroll, Fernando's teammate, who had to withdraw from the race with recurring wrist issues, and I guess he's undergoing surgery to repair damage to his wrist that happened probably 2 seasons ago. It was in preseason training is where I guess it happened. Anyway, surgery's next for Lance. I don't know if he will be at his home Grand Prix in Canada in 2 weeks' time. These guys heal fast, but I don't know after wrist surgery. I don't know. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And my last note, of course, is, hey, we just were able to enjoy another solid weekend from our friend of the podcast, Jack Crawford. He threw a pair of fourth-place finishes on the table in the F2 races this weekend. Jack came oh so close to winning the sprint race. What happened there was we had another safety car late in the race. He was leading the race and had led most of the race. He made a terrific move at the start of the race from the second row of the grid, made some great passes, and by the end of the first lap, he was leading the race comfortably. The problem was that last-minute safety car came out, bunched the field back up, and several of his competitors came in and switched from old hard tires to brand new soft tires, whereas Jack's team had no choice but to lead him out there because he was leading the race and he had to maintain that track position. And when should know it, they threw the green flag and there was just enough time that the guys that put the soft tires on came back up through the field and they finished 1, 2, 3 and Jack finished 4th. But even so, it was a heck of a drive on Jack's part. His passes were a thing of beauty at the beginning of the race. So congratulations to Jack. They're off for a while as Formula One goes off to Canada. And then we'll pick things back up for all the series at the British Grand Prix. That will be right around the 1st of July, I believe. So looking forward to that.
Sabrina's race notes. Thanks, Dick, not only for great notes this race, but also taking care of last week's race notes as I was unable to get mine together while moving. I did watch Barcelona as I settled into my new place, so here are my race notes. Hopefully they raise some good points. Number 1, Flexi Wings. Non-issue. Looking forward to seeing how the development wars proceed from here on out. Number 2, Hulkenberg got points in a Sauber, ahead of Lewis in a Ferrari. Nico started at P16 and ended up in P5. Number 3, Mercedes Antonelli engine suddenly goes out during the second stint, which then throws the entire race into chaos. Didn't see that coming. Number 4, George didn't have the best start to the race. Toto came on the line telling him to concentrate. I'm a little confused by what's happening at Mercedes right now. Number 5, team orders at Ferrari. Didn't think I'd see that, at least not this early in the season. It's hard watching Lewis struggle. Charles did a good job this week. I think he deserved his podium. Number 6, Sainz had a sad ending to his home race. Alonso had some great overtakes and squeaked into those points. Number 7, I don't understand why Red Bull decided to give the place to George, especially at that point in the race and with Max already not in an optimal position considering his hard tires. Also, of all the teams, Red Bull is the only one that had 4 pit stops for both drivers. I'm confused by the strategy calls over there. Number 8, Hadjar continues to impress me. Highest rookie in the class. Number 9, Bortoletto sparred with Alonso. Not for long, but still impressive considering the relationship between the two. Number 10, if you haven't already, watch the F2 Sprint and Feature race. Both are worth your time. Good racing. And when you do, root for Jack Crawford. He worked hard in both of those races. Unfortunately, strategy, yellows, and a safety car didn't work in his favor.